Hi, boys and girls. We're going to continue with our biography of Abe Lincoln by Augustus Stevenson. Um, Remember, we have good sport. You kind of go with the flow. Unusual means not normal. Popular means you're liked by many. Evidence, what we use to prove something is true. And then respected. If you're respected, people admire you a lot of times for the good traits that you have. And Abe has a lot of kind, good-natured qualities that make him, and he's a hard worker, that make him respected by everybody he meets. Our chapter today is called Helping the Helpless. Molly, said the copper to his wife, Abe Lincoln has a new suit of clothes. Well, well, said Molly, I'm glad to hear that. If ever anyone in this world deserves a new suit, it's that young man. That's exactly what I was thinking, said the cooper. But how did he get enough money to buy a suit? Asked Molly. He split rails, Molly. Each yard of material cost him 1 week of hard work. He must have split hundreds of rails, said Molly. He must have, said the copper, because it was time he bought a good suit. People were making fun of his clothes. Who was? Molly asked sharply. She liked Abe very much, and she didn't want anyone to make fun of him. Oh, the folks that don't want Abe to succeed, said the copper again. Of course, said Molly, they are jealous of Abe because he can make better speeches than any of them. Indeed they can, said the copper. Abe Lincoln is the best speaker in the state. He is going to speak at the big meeting next week. I hope he will wear his new suit, said Molly. He will. That's why he bought it. He told me so himself. Well, no one need to be ashamed of Abe Lincoln in his old clothes, said Molly. A week later, Mr. Lincoln was on his way to the big meeting. He was wearing his new suit, and he was proud of it. No one can make fun of me today, he said to himself. I look as well as anyone else now. He was riding horseback on a muddy road, and he rode carefully. He didn't want his new clothes splashed with mud. Just then he heard a pig squeal. He looked around. There in a field, in a great mud hole, was a little pig. It was struggling to get out of the mud, but it couldn't. It looked straight into Abe's eyes and squealed again. Abe said, I'm very sorry, little pig, but I can't help you. This is my new suit, and the mud would ruin it. I hope someone else will get you out. Then Abe rode on, but he couldn't forget the pitiful squeal. He couldn't forget the fear in the little pig's eyes. Suddenly, he turned his horse around and rode back. He pulled the pig out of the mud and put him on dry land. And here's a picture, and you can see obviously some time has passed because he looks much older now, but here he is helping the poor pig out of the mud. I'm going to synthesize here. We know that Abe saved the little dog that had a broken leg. We know that he would never shoot a turkey again. We know that he was angry at the other boys when they hurt the turtle. We know that he swam to save honey from being left behind, and now he is helping this little pig. So we can put these ideas together and say that he was kind to all animals because he was a kind man in general. We can use that as evidence to support our idea. That was fine for the little pig, but it was hard on Mr. Lincoln's new suit, the suit that he had worked so hard to get, the first good suit he'd ever owned. Mr. Lincoln arrived at the big meeting with mud-splattered clothes. He was late. The people had been waiting for him for a long time. They were shouting for him now. Abe, Abe, they shouted, speech, speech. Mr. Lincoln brushed his clothes, but the mud stains showed plainly. He couldn't keep the people waiting any longer, so he went to the platform and began his speech. In 2 minutes, everyone forgot the muddy clothes. Mr. Abe Lincoln was speaking. Nothing else mattered. The little trunk. Several years passed. Abe Lincoln still lived in Illinois, but he didn't live in a cabin in the woods. He lived in a 2-story house in a big town, Springfield. No longer did Abe plow, chop down trees, and split rails. He didn't work on a farm now. He was a lawyer. He had an office in that big town, and everyone respected him and called him Mr. Lincoln. That is what study and good books had done for Abe. He still worked hard, but it was the kind of work he loved. He worked with books, and he was helping people. He would ride horseback many miles to get someone out of trouble. He would ride on muddy roads and through rain, sleet, and snow. He still studied at night and sometimes till midnight and past midnight. The more he learned, the more he wanted to learn. He never thought he knew enough. But he never forgot to tell funny stories and jokes, and he never forgot to be kind. He would go out of his way to neglect his own business to help others. Years later, people still remembered how kind he had been. Mr. Lincoln helped me once, said an old lady to 3 little girls. Mr. Lincoln? The great Abraham Lincoln? Asked Helen. Yes, my dear, said the old lady. The great Abraham Lincoln. It was when I was a little girl. I lived in the same town, Springfield, and he often passed by my home. Did he speak to you? Asked Elsie. Always, Elsie. He never forgot to look for me. Mr. Lincoln loved children. Grandma smiled as she remembered. How did he help you? Asked Helen. I'll tell you the whole story, girls. I was going to visit my grandmother in another city. I had to go on the train, and I had to go alone. My father and mother were too busy to go with me. But they helped me get ready. Mother made some pretty dresses for me. Father bought a little trunk. A trunk, said the 3 girls all together. Yes, indeed, said the old lady. But it wasn't a toy trunk either. It was large enough to hold 6 dresses, 2 pairs of shoes, my Sunday hat, and a sunbonnet, and many other things. Did you have a special Sunday dress? Asked Mary. Yes, my dear, I did. It was pink. I had pink slippers and pink stockings. My Sunday hat was pink too. I know you looked beautiful, Grandma, said Mary. Grandma smiled again as she remembered something else. I had a pretty pink parasol too, she said. A parasol is like a little umbrella, only it's not for rain, it's for blocking the sun. Did you put it in your trunk? Eloise asked. Grandmother nodded. It was the last thing Mother put in, she said. Then she locked the trunk and Father carried it downstairs. He left it on the porch and went for the expressman. I was all ready, so I just sat down and waited. I waited and waited. I talked with Mother. Then I waited some more, but the expressman didn't come. It was almost time for the train, so I went out to the gate to look for him. I looked up and down the street. And then I looked up and down the street and up and down. There wasn't any sign of him. Oh, oh, said the girls. Then, said Grandmother, I heard the train whistle, and I knew it would soon be at the station. Oh, oh, said the girls again. What did you do, Grandma? Asked Elsie. I cried, Elsie. I cried out loud, too. I knew I couldn't get to the train now. Suddenly, a tall man crossed the street. He had black hair, gray eyes, and a kind face. Mr. Lincoln, cried the girls. Yes, girls, it was Mr. Lincoln. He said he heard me crying across the street and wanted to know what was the matter. I told him about my trunk. Is it a large trunk, he asked. No, it's a small trunk, I said. It's there on the porch. I'll take it to the station, he said. Then he ran to the porch, lifted the trunk to his shoulder, and away he hurried to the station. I had to run to keep up with him, but I did keep up, and we reached the station just in time. The train was ready to go. The conductor was calling, all aboard! Wait for this, young lady, called Mr. Lincoln. The conductor helped me up the stairs. Mr. Lincoln put my trunk in the baggage car. Then the train began to move. Mr. Lincoln waved his hat to me, and I waved my hand to him. He was the kindest man in the world, I said to myself, and I have said it ever since, girls. He was always the kindest man in the world. And here's a picture of him helping the little girl. So this is further evidence of what a kind man he is, because he's grown up, he's gone to school, he's become a lawyer, he's very respected in his town, and he took the time to help a little girl get her trunk to the train station. Thanks for listening.